I'd like to speak a moment about why I believe that the traditional way of learning music theory sucks, especially for guitar players. If you take the average person who's a guitar player, they're wanting to learn how to understand music, and so they think it's a good idea to learn music theory. Maybe they've been playing for a couple of years, but now they want to understand better about what they're playing and what's going on. So most of the time, when people show up on these forums and ask for advice, people recommend a book or they send them to a music site like musictheory.net. Now, in my opinion, if you're a guitar player, that's one of the stupidest ways to learn. Because one of the first things that you're going to find is that they start talking about lines and staves, clefs, leisure lines, as if you're going to be sight reading. Now, if I told you that sight reading is almost completely useless for a guitar player that wants to learn music theory or otherwise, would that surprise you? Well, I really believe this is the case. And if not, it's extremely practical to learn how to sight read. For one, let's think about how long does it take somebody to sight read till they can do it competently? Months? Years? Exactly. And as a guitar player, how many times are you going to use it over the life cycle of your music playing experience? Most guitar players don't even sight read. For most, it's a time-consuming exercise. It consumes a lot of your life, but really has very little practical benefit on a daily basis. Now, I'm saying that it's almost completely useless, and I want to put the emphasis on almost, unless you happen to be doing one of the following things. The first one is jazz or jazz ensemble, something that's going to require you to read lead sheets or things that are notated in that language in that regard. Many jazz books use standard notation, and so if that is something that is emphasis or focus, it is a good idea to learn sight reading. The second is going to be if you are going to study classical guitar. Even that, though, has its own special notation that's specifically for classical guitar. But nevertheless, most guitar studies do involve sight reading. Another is if you're going to be a composer. Let's say you're going to be composing for a video game, or you were going to be doing some sort of commercial orchestra, soundtrack, things of that nature. If you're going to be doing that kind of thing, then yes, sight reading is very important. If for no other reason, most orchestration programs and notation use traditional sight reading and rhythm to do so. So if you're going to become a composer or an arranger, something along those lines, sight reading is a very good skill to develop. Now another is if you were going to be like a hired gun, say a studio musician. For example, let's say you were going to be playing on commercials or radio jingles or things of that nature. Now, when you're a hired gun like that, usually the band leader or whoever it is in the studio is going to give you the sheet music. They're going to say time is money and let's go, we're recording. And they're not going to sit there and teach you something, how to play it, and they're certainly not going to pay you and then spend time to tab it out for you. So by and large, though, most of us are never going to need those benefits. In proportion to the amount of time and effort and energy that it's going to take to become effective at using it. Now, most of us wouldn't give 2 years of our life learning something that we may use less than 5% of the time, or that we may never need to use at all. So I would suggest to you starting out that we do not need sight reading to have an understanding of music theory. Some of the useless things that we don't need to understand music theory would surprise you. For example, circle of fifths, meter, key signatures. You really don't need to know those to understand music theory, and you don't really need it, especially in the case of guitar. So, by virtual show of hands, think about it. How many of you have gone out trying to learn music theory, and one of the most immediate questions that you would come up with as you were reading or listening to somebody would be, how is this supposed to connect to what I want to do? A lot of times it seems like just a bunch of boring memorization and pointless mental exercises. And I get it. But the only things you really need to do to understand music theory is first understand the musical alphabet. Basically, that means to know that after B comes C. After C comes C sharp or D flat. This is our musical alphabet. And then you need to be able to find those on the neck of the guitar. After all, we are guitar players. So why would we want to learn a whole bunch of facts but then not be able to use them? So let's transition a little bit and discuss notes on the neck and how to learn it. Has anybody gone to YouTube lately and tried to do a search on all of these wonderful methods of knowing the notes on the neck and how quickly it can be done? I've seen estimates of these so-called easy ways range from many hours to several months at best. All of it seems to be mental and menial. That's why I think that your traditional way, the way that is out there right now being presented, sucks. When you start adding up just the simplest things of just getting off the ground to understand music theory, we're already talking about many months to a year plus that we're committed to doing things that most of us do not enjoy doing very much. Do you really want to memorize hours and hours of junk? And then we get into scales, right? Major scales, ear training, intervals, knowing all of these triads, memorizing them. What do you think all of these require? I mean, the answer is incredibly ridiculous amounts of time. There's nothing in traditional music theory and the way it's taught that comes easy at all. You're weighted down with so much overcomplicated jargon. It will scare off most, if not discourage, all but the most stubborn and tenacious of players. And those who bear ahead and learn it, they have my respect. I'm not putting anybody down. But most of us will become intimidated or just discouraged. So what do? If you're one of those people that runs into that very familiar place where you can't really connect how it all works and you can't connect how it's all supposed to take you where you want to go, what most of us do is we settle. We try to hybrid our knowledge with little bits and pieces of ideas that we think we understand over time together, but there are lots and lots of holes. And if you add to that inaccuracies, gross assumptions that aren't factual, and you really end up building a musical house of cards that can blow over at the slightest challenge. Indeed, we spend years and years trying to understand this, or else we just give up and we decide that it's for someone else. It's not for me. Maybe you feel like time has passed you by. Maybe when you were younger, you could have gone to college and then you would have that, but instead you chose a career. But see, I want to say that the problem isn't you. The problem really is the traditional system. It's all that people have right now out there. It's what's been taught, it's what's been accepted, and it's right now seen as the only way. Not only the only way, but the best way. And the more people that accept this way of thinking, the harder it is to bring change into people's thinking. It's assumed that if the majority of people see it and understand it a certain way, that it must be the only way. After all, the reasoning goes that if anybody had a better way, then wouldn't we all know about it? Well, I'm here to tell you I've been doing this. I've been teaching against the grain. I've been usurping music theory in its traditional ways for over 10 years. I can teach you the notes of the neck of the guitar in 4 to 5 days. I can teach you how to name the notes of every major and minor triad in 3 lessons. And you know how much time each day you have to spend between these lessons just practicing what I give you? 10 minutes. I can teach you to play guitar up and down the entire neck, forward, backward, up, down, with no limitations, any order, and change on a dime without any mistakes in any key in about 5 lessons. If you've been playing for a while, how long did it take you to learn the pentatonic scales or the caged method? And how long did it take you to learn it to proficiency? I guarantee you it was more than a few weeks. It may have been more than a few months. For some of you, it may have been years. I can teach you how to write a major scale perfectly in one lesson. In 2 lessons, you can perfectly name all the diatonic triads in any given major key. In 3 lessons, you can do that and any minor key. Now that includes harmonic minor, melodic minor, and natural minor. And we haven't even gotten started on intervals. By the time you finish another month, you have all the 7ths, 9ths, 6ths, 11ths, 13ths, altered dominant, 6/9 chords, suspended, diminished, half diminished, augmented, and so on. Not only that, but you'll also have inversions. You'd also be able to instantly name interval distance on any 2 notes. If I came up to you and said, hey, what's the 13th away from C, you would be able to say A. If I said, what's a minor 9th away from G, you would be able to say A flat. If I said, go up a minor 3rd from E, you'd be able to go to G. As quickly as I just said it. How long does that take? 2 lessons. If we keep doing things the same way, we're always going to have the same results. I know everybody has heard that before. But I really think that it's time that we lose any sense of collective pride that thinks that we already know the best way to do everything. Open up to the fact that yes, maybe for the last 100, 200 plus years, we may have had it wrong. Maybe we've just been running around with bricks on our feet, but never questioning why does it have to be so hard. So as I leave you today, I just want to impress upon you that the traditional way is one of the biggest reasons why so many people, especially guitar players, do not have a firm, immediate grasp and use of music theory.